Let's talk today about our topsy-turvy world and the inconsistencies that I find in all of us. People don't want to change. There's something wrong. How much can we suffer? How many people do we lose to tornadoes, to drought, to climate change and extremes, to rising ocean waters, to less food for everyone, to migration of whole nations because they're either under siege from the weather and have no water and can't plant crops, or they're at war because one country has decided that you're no longer a sovereign nation and they don't want you to exist. And the world sits by helpless. I don't understand. Why helpless? Why are we just looking away or looking down and not looking straight ahead of us and saying what's happening is not acceptable? We're actually leaving it to our kids. In Montana, the kids are taking the state of Montana to court. And why are they doing that? Because the Constitution of the state of Montana promises them clean air, clean water, and a healthy way of life. The kids have got asthma. They can't breathe. And they can't get any fruit or vegetables, and the fish aren't there anymore. They're right to do that. And all over the world, kids are protesting. And maybe they should be protesting about guns as well, because the gun lobby is too strong. In Michigan, they're finally having to take notice of all the guns and the gun safety rules in their state. 77% of all citizens, that's Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, have asked for and have now gotten the following laws passed in their state. They're getting background checks, and if you've got a violent criminal record or a violent domestic record, you're not getting a gun in the state of Michigan anymore. Not only that, all guns, especially if you've got kids in the house, must be stored in a cabinet, locked, and unloaded. If somehow that kid manages to get a hold of your gun and shoots somebody, God forbid, then there are heavy penalties to pay. That's sensible gun control. And they've also made arrangements with the folks who sell these cabinets to do it on the cheap so that people don't have to pay too much and are not penalized for everyone's safety. Well, it's a start. It's a big start. On the climate front, we are absolutely schizophrenic. On the one hand, we note all the data. We see that the Middle East may have temperatures of 50 degrees centigrade. That's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We know Norway is developing areas that they've just uncovered because the snow was melted of phosphorus, vanadium, and titanium. Well, we need that in a lot of our new chips and evidently renewable way of life. But on the other hand, they want to open up the Norwegian sea waters to mining of rare earth metals. Why? We could recycle all the lithium in all our batteries and have enough lithium to power any EV. vehicle that we want. No sense mining the deep because we don't know what we're going to disturb. And instead of giving almost no money to renewables, why are we allowing $1 trillion in subsidies to go to the fossil fuel companies and to Big Agra? And why are we allowing the International Monetary Fund and all the big banks to fund coal and other resources that we know are contributing to our bad health, which is causing cardiac problems, asthma, and death? Why is this happening? When you're giving trillions to fossil fuel companies and they're giving hundreds of millions to politicians to vote to continue those fossil fuel companies, where do we, the people of this earth, stand? It's not just here in America. They said about $11 trillion globally goes to support fossil fuel companies. And those corporations have never made as much money in their whole lives. And CO2 emissions are going higher and higher. We know we can't afford it. When we had the fires last week from Canada filtering their polluted air down to New York City, our parts per million in terms of pollutants was off the chart. Nobody should be outside. And if you've got a leaky apartment because some landlord has decided that you're in affordable housing and you don't really deserve to have that apartment fixed, you're up the creek. You gotta wear your mask in the house. We have to have air purifiers for everyone and HEPA filters, just like we did during the pandemic. Except now we've got a pandemic of pollution that's circling the globe. And why? Because we're not getting off of fossil fuels. We're not even making them cap the emissions that they have because they have poor maintenance on their refineries. If they did that, we'd at least remove some of the carbon and methane in this that's leaking into the air. But we don't even ask that. We ask nothing back from these corporations that we now know for 50 years have hoodwinked us. And we don't seem to care. We're miserable. We got mental health problems. And it's as if everyone else is wearing rose-colored glasses while the fossil fuel industry and Big Agra flourishes to our detriment. Well, I think we got to take the rose-colored glasses off and start looking at the world as it really is. As it really is, it's no longer sustainable for human life. It's not sustainable for plant life as we know it. It's not sustainable for a lot of the fish life as we know it, or the animal life. People can go extinct. There have been several extinctions over the millennia. I don't particularly want to be one of them. Here I am, I've reached a good age, and I want to keep going. I don't feel like I want to die tomorrow. Will I go out and buy my my drawer, to be buried in? Yeah, I will do that. Do I want to see that drawer anytime soon? Not in my lifetime, I don't. Well, which is really true. I won't see it in my lifetime. But no, I don't want to go to sleep and stay asleep forever. I'd rather be here and look at our topsy-turvy world and tell you that it's not consistent with living and living the good life. And what else do? We say we value our frontline workers, but then we steal their wages. That's not value as far as I'm concerned. If you value people, you pay them a decent wage. So you don't take home a gazillion bucks. Maybe only take home a half a gazillion. But the guys who are working for you and the men and women, they all deserve a living wage. Because a lot of them are working 2, 3 jobs and they can't get by. And they can't afford the housing and the rental in any of our states. People need jobs. They need food. And they need counseling. After the pandemic and the isolation and the loss of life that so many of us have experienced, people need help. There is no such thing as pulling yourself up from your bootstraps. I don't even know where the saying came from. And I think when I did read about that saying, they said it was false. It didn't mean that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and then you're perfectly okay. It was some kind of a derogatory term. Makes sense, because there's a difference between those of us who don't have a big fortune and those of us who do. It looks like the ones who have the big fortune, they went to good schools, better than you and me. They made the right networks, and they cared only about making money, while the rest of us may have cared a little more about relationships and had empathy and compassion for others. And that's why we don't have the big bucks, because we're just not looking at money as an end in itself. Do I like beautiful things? You bet. Can I afford to buy what I love? No, not anymore. Not when I'm not working. I can't. Would I like to help other entrepreneurs? Yes, I would. And if you'd like me to sponsor you on my channel, I'd be happy to do so. I won't charge you. In fact, what I'd like to do is do something like a Kickstarter. And somehow, if you've got a good idea and people listen to that idea, get you some money. Would I take a fee so I could then have money for other entrepreneurs? Yeah, I would. And I think it's an interesting idea, and we're fleshing it out. You can contact me at The Voice of Joyce at earthlink.net and let me know, what do you think? Would you like me to sponsor you or give you a shot or an interview on this program so that we can support small businesses? I think big businesses have run their course. They're not so innovative anymore. And they've bought off the politicians. And you know they've bought off most of the politicians because we don't have a say in anything. If it's social media, we don't have a voice. They can sell all our data to anyone they please. And we know that with Section 230 of the FCC, Fair Decency Law, we could control that content. I don't like bots, algorithms, AI, making decisions for me on who's hiring me, who's giving me a mortgage, and who's looking at my medical debt. We need to control corporations, all corporations. But number 1 and 2 are the fossil fuel industry and Big Agra. I want to survive and thrive, and I want to see my kids and my grandkids do the same. And I can only do that with confidence if I see us finally taking climate change seriously. How many millions have to die before we realize that the hypocrisy that we perpetuate is not sustainable? Thank you for listening, and have a lovely week. God's blessings to all.